The President of the United States stood in the White House cross hall.
Primetime address. Full cameras. The whole world watching.
And then he said it.
We're going to bring them back to the Stone Ages, where they belong.
93 million people. A civilization over 6,000 years old. And the most powerful man on Earth just threatened to erase it. Within hours of that speech, American bombs were already falling. This time on a bridge near Tehran. 8 people killed, 95 wounded. Emergency responders rushed in. Then the U.S. struck the same bridge again, while those responders were still on it. This is not a threat anymore. This is happening. And Iran just told the world, it is not over. If you want to understand what's really going on here, not the edited clips, not the reassuring headlines, stay until the end of this video, because what's coming next could reshape the entire world order. And if this kind of deep, unfiltered analysis matters to you, take 2 seconds right now and hit that subscribe button. It genuinely helps this channel reach people who need to hear this. Day 33. 33 days since the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury on the morning of February 28, 2026. The attack came without warning, before dawn. Surprise strikes across Iran, military sites, missile depots, nuclear facilities. And in the very first hours, one target above all others, Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, dead. The man who had ruled Iran for 34 years, gone in a single airstrike, along with dozens of senior military and government officials wiped out in the opening salvo. Tehran woke up leaderless, and the world held its breath. But Iran did not collapse. It did not surrender. It did not crumble into chaos the way Washington may have hoped. Iran retaliated. Hundreds of ballistic missiles and drones launched simultaneously at Israel, at U.S. military bases in Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, Saudi Arabia, and the UAE. A drone struck a British military base on Cyprus. Missiles flew toward Turkey. For the first time in modern history, Iran fired at every single Gulf Cooperation Council country in the same night. The Gulf, once considered a safe haven in a volatile region, was on fire. And that was just day one. What Trump told the American public on Wednesday night was technically true. Military objectives are being met. Iranian missile launch sites are being degraded. Nuclear facilities have been pounded. The leadership structure of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps has been decimated. He said the war is nearing completion. He said the core strategic objectives are, very shortly, going to be achieved. But then, in the same breath, he said the U.S. will hit Iran extremely hard for another 2 to 3 weeks. He threatened to destroy every single one of Iran's electricity generating plants, simultaneously, if no deal is reached. He threatened to target oil fields, Iran's entire energy infrastructure, the veins that keep 93 million people alive. And Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense, posted one line on social media immediately after. Just 4 words. Back to the Stone Age. That phrase has a history. It was coined by a U.S. Air Force general named Curtis LeMay during the Vietnam War, a man who helped firebomb Japanese cities in World War II, killing hundreds of thousands of civilians. His philosophy was simple: destroy everything modern, force submission through total destruction. Legal experts are already calling what Trump described a textbook definition of collective punishment, a war crime under international humanitarian law. Over 100 international law scholars signed a letter this week calling the war itself a clear violation of the United Nations Charter. But here's what the mainstream coverage won't tell you straight. Trump's threat to hit the power plants? It wasn't the first time. He issued that ultimatum before, gave Iran 48 hours to open the Strait of Hormuz or face the strikes. Then he extended the deadline. Then he extended it again. The new deadline is April 6th, 3 days from now. Iran's response to the Stone Age threat was not fear, it was contempt. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi posted one line on social media that stopped the internet cold. There's one striking difference between the present and the Stone Age. There was no oil or gas being pumped in the Middle East back then. Then he asked the question directly. Are the president and the Americans who put him in office sure that they want to turn back the clock? Think about what that sentence means. Iran is not threatening a missile strike. Iran is threatening the global economy. 1/5 of the world's oil supply flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has kept it effectively shut since day one of this war. Oil prices have already crossed $110 a barrel. Gas prices across America have passed $4 per gallon. The World Bank is warning of mounting global inflation, job losses, and food insecurity. And Iran is saying, you want to escalate? We can make this worse. Iran's military spokesman went further. Chief Brigadier General Syed Majid Musavi didn't just reject the Stone Age threat, he mocked it. Hollywood illusions have infected your thinking so much that with a meager 250-year history, you are threatening a civilization that is over 6,000 years old. It is you who are taking your soldiers to the grave. And then the Khatam al-Anbiya Central Headquarters, the command structure running Iran's military operations, issued its formal position. Iran will continue fighting until the United States and Israel face permanent regret and surrender. They promised attacks that are more crushing, broader, and more destructive. These are not the words of a country that believes it is losing. Here is the math that Trump does not want to explain to the American public. Since the war began on February 28th, the United States and Israel have conducted over 600 strikes against Iranian targets in just the first 4 days alone. More than 2,000 Iranians have been killed. Thousands of civilian sites have been hit. Hospitals, schools, universities, pharmaceutical factories. A pharmaceutical factory that produced cancer medication for children was struck last Tuesday. A century-old medical research center in Tehran was bombed this week. 250 students and teachers have been killed in strikes on over 600 educational facilities across Iran. And now, the bridge in Karaj. First strike. Civilian casualties. Emergency responders arrive. Second strike. While they're still there. Iran's foreign minister called it the work of an enemy in disarray. He said every bridge and building will be rebuilt stronger. What will never recover, he wrote, is damage to America's standing. That is the strategic calculation Tehran is making right now. Every civilian they can document. Every school, every hospital, every ambulance caught in a second strike. Iran is building a case to the world that America is not the liberator it claims to be, and the world is watching closely. Now here is what is happening economically, and why this matters to you personally, wherever you are watching this. The Strait of Hormuz has been effectively shut for 33 days. That strait is the throat of the global oil market. 1 in every 5 barrels of oil on the planet passes through it. Since Iran closed it, global shipping has been in crisis. Airlines are hiking fuel surcharges. Pakistan just drastically raised fuel prices. Malaysia is telling government workers to stay home to cut fuel costs. Deutsche Bank analysts said Trump's Wednesday speech offered no signal of the U.S. seeking an imminent off-ramp. Oil is sitting above $103 to $110, depending on the benchmark. And Trump, during his address, casually suggested that other countries should go into the strait and take it, before claiming it would just open up naturally once the war ends. French President Emmanuel Macron immediately responded that a military operation to open the strait by force is unrealistic. Britain convened an emergency meeting with 40 countries demanding its immediate and unconditional reopening. Iran responded by saying it is drafting a post-war framework with Oman to control maritime traffic, on its own terms. And here is the number that should alarm every economist watching. Qatar's LNG export capacity was cut by 17% when Iran struck the Ras Laffan gas field. The damage will take 3 to 5 years to repair. Qatar's energy infrastructure is not a side casualty. It is the world's largest producer of liquefied natural gas. This war stopped being just about Iran and Israel on day one. Here is what very few outlets are covering aggressively: the ground war question. The Washington Post reported this week that the Pentagon is preparing for weeks of limited ground operations inside Iran. Potential targets include Karg Island, Iran's crude oil export hub, and coastal sites near the Strait of Hormuz. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf responded without hesitation. Our men are waiting for the arrival of American soldiers on the ground to set them on fire and punish their regional allies once and for all. 30,000 U.S. troops are now in the region. 20,000 Israeli reservists have been called up on top of the 50,000 already deployed. The Israeli Ministry of Health moved its entire hospital operations underground at the start of the war. These are not the preparations of a side that thinks this ends quickly. And on Iran's side, despite 33 days of bombardment, the missiles are still flying. The UAE intercepted 19 Iranian missiles and 26 drones just last night. Sirens went off across Israel on the first night of Passover. Some Israelis celebrated the holiday underground in bunkers. One man named Jeffrey, a writer in Tel Aviv, sat at a Passover meal in a shelter and told a reporter, "This is not my first choice." There is one more thing you need to know. Trump admitted in a private conversation that has since been reported that Iranian military leadership does not believe they are losing the war. They are not feeling the pain. And so there is now an internal discussion in Washington about, and this is the direct framing being used, testing their pain tolerance. That phrase. Think about what that means when the next step on the table is destroying every power plant in a country of 93 million people, simultaneously. No electricity. In a country where the World Bank and Red Cross are already warning that medical supplies are running low and emergency needs are rising exponentially. International Red Cross officials said this week that trauma kits and critical gear could run out entirely if the war continues at this pace. Iran's ambassador to the International Atomic Energy Agency said the allegation that Iran was restarting uranium enrichment, the stated justification for this war, was a lie, a very big lie. Over 100 international law experts disagree with the legal basis of the operation entirely. And a letter from Pope Leo XIV was released this week, addressed to all sides. No one should fear that threats of death and destruction will come from the sky, but they are coming, every night. So where does this end? Trump says 2 to 3 more weeks. Iran says never, not until the US and Israel face permanent surrender. The April 6 deadline for the Strait of Hormuz is 72 hours away. Iran's new military leadership, appointed after Khamenei's assassination, has already said it will continue fighting until the humiliation of its enemies. Iran's supreme leader's son has taken over internal leadership, and the IRGC has openly threatened to target Middle Eastern campuses of American universities and operations of U.S. tech companies across the region. 18 European countries have urged both sides to stop. China is watching its oil supply lines suffocate. Russia has stayed quiet but strategic. NATO is fracturing. Trump openly floated the idea of the U.S. leaving NATO during an interview this week, criticizing allies for what he called lackluster military support. And somewhere in all of this, ordinary people are paying the price. In Iran, where 2,000 are dead and the lights go out at night. In Israel, where families spend Passover in bomb shelters. In Kuwait, where 4 soldiers and 4 civilians were killed by Iranian strikes. In Bahrain, in Saudi Arabia.
In the UAE, in Qatar. In every country where energy prices just got higher, food just got more expensive, and the future just got more uncertain. Here's what you need to hold on to when you see the headlines tomorrow. When Trump says the war is nearing completion, he is also threatening 2 to 3 more weeks of the most intense bombing yet. When Iran says it will escalate, it has already hit every Gulf country, shut the Strait of Hormuz, and promised more destructive attacks. When markets rally on ceasefire rumors, they crash again when no off-ramp appears. The story being told in 10-second clips is that America is winning, Iran is crumbling. The end is near. The fuller story is that a 6,000-year-old civilization with 93 million people is fighting for survival. That it has already brought the global oil market to its knees. That it is still firing missiles after 33 days. That the math of the Strait of Hormuz gives it a weapon no bomb can easily destroy.
And the most powerful man on earth is standing in the White House, threatening the Stone Age, while the world asks, what comes next? 28 Israelis dead from Iranian strikes. Over 2,000 Iranians killed since February 28th. Oil at $110 a barrel. The Strait of Hormuz closed. The April 6th deadline, 72 hours away. This is not a moment to look away. Share this video, because the people around you deserve to understand what is actually happening, not just what the headline says. And if you are not subscribed yet, this is the moment. Hit that button, because this story is not slowing down, and neither are we.